The Old Republic movies are more or less confirmed. I want to explain why this will save the Star Wars fan base. Stay up to date about the nerdy things you care about. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode. Today's shout out goes to Slam Rehovart. Indeed, Kurt was the name of the original Super Scroll. We'll do another nerd card question at the end of this video. What's up, all of you beautiful nerds? Happy Wednesday to you. I'm, of course, Josh, and this is the Den of Nerds. And guys, holy cow, this is some really good news. We've got a report coming out of Star Wars Newsnet that I technically have to tell you is a rumor. This is something that they have heard from their sources, and the source has explained to them that they are 95% sure that this is accurate. But technically, this is just a rumor at this point, although I think what is going on here is Disney is likely saving the information. They're not confirming anything, so if people are reaching out, nothing's being confirmed. They might even announce something like this at Star Wars Celebration. So for now, technically this is a rumor, though Star Wars Newsnet has a very good track record, and this falls in line with a lot of the stuff I've been talking about for the past couple of months. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a 99.9% chance of being accurate.
They've done studies, 60% of the time, it works every time.
So go check out the full article on Star Wars Newsnet. They get all the credit in the world for this, but let's go over a few of the things that were said from their source right now. The source apparently says that he or she was approached about working on the next movie this autumn. It is not the Rian Johnson trilogy, it is the Game of Thrones guy's first movie, and it is set during the Old Republic as Disney wants to open up the Star Wars timeline and appeal to a more Game of Thrones style audience. The person goes on to explain, so the timeline is hundreds of years prior to the Skywalker, so think almost Star Wars meets Lord of the Rings. The last comment that they put in their article says, filming starts in the fall and art departments are in design phases now as the script is being finalized. That is all I know, but I am 95% confident that this is accurate. All right, so let's read way too far into this now, have some fun, and then I also want to explain why I truly believe this will set the Star Wars fan base back on the right track. Okay, so first of all, let's dig into them saying that filming starts this fall and that design teams are already working on concepts as the script is being finished. The story here is that Dan and Dave have been working on this, and even though they have said in interviews that they are going to not do anything Star Wars until they are done with the last season of Game of Thrones, it would appear that that was not exactly what was happening. In my opinion, what probably happened was they started throwing ideas around like immediately. They maybe even did some spec script type stuff, and then as the heavy load was finished for the last season of Game of Thrones, which even now, some of the later episodes are probably still being worked on and edited, but they're all shot. All the heavy lifting is done from a production standpoint. Dan and Dave likely started working seriously on this trilogy about 3 months ago. Total speculation, just my opinion, but there's no way they're already going into design. If these guys are truly producing this series of films, which we now know will be likely 3, there's, like I said, no way that we're this far into design and scripting if those two had not been directly involved. So there is a chance, a small chance, that we will see something announced about this at Star Wars Celebration next month. Holy crap, I'm really hoping that we get something there. That would be really amazing. Now, when it comes to the comment about Lord of the Rings meets Star Wars, that is a match made in heaven. And I think one of the benefits of going back in time to this time period in the Star Wars universe has to do with the more mystical side of the Force. First of all, the Sith and the Jedi should both be established there, although I'll come back to that in just a second. But overall, there should be way more mysticism and mystery in these films, not only from a canonical standpoint, but from a storytelling standpoint as well. When I think Lord of the Rings, I think, not only this big MacGuffin, but a lot of fantasy elements, just epic nature of different things. So I'm really hoping that that's what they mean when they say Star Wars meets Lord of the Rings. Now, I think the idea of setting this hundreds of years in the past is really cool. And I know this is probably something that the source was just explained, hundreds of years in the past. But technically, in order to do the Old Republic properly with Sith and Jedi, you need to go back at least 1,000 years. You'll recall, if you're a super nerd like me, that Master Mundi said in The Phantom Menace that it had been over 1,000 years since a Sith had been seen in the galaxy. They thought they were all gone.
He was trained in the Jedi art. My only conclusion can be that it was the Sith Lord.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
And so if we're doing some Old Republic stuff, I think you need to go at least 1,000 years back. I want to go before Yoda was even born because I want to really distance the story from what is happening in the Skywalker saga. Ultimately, I hope they sort of strike a cool balance where you go back far enough to which you put distance between that story and the Skywalker saga, and we can really explore some good Old Republic stuff, but don't go far enough back to like the start of the Jedi or any of the Revan or Malak stuff. I say leave that stuff in Legends and kind of find yourself maybe somewhere in between. Now, whether this is like in the time period of like the Emperor Vitiate, which I don't think they would do that character, but like a similar type of character maybe, or whether this is in the time of Darth Bane. Either way, I think there's really cool stuff that you can explore. I don't personally want them to touch Revan and Malak and that kind of stuff. Leave that in Legends. And obviously I want them to be before Yoda and Yoda's Jedi and the Republic during that time. Okay, so let's get into why I think this will completely fix the Star Wars fan base problem right now and get a lot of people back on the same page. Now, when they say in this report that they want to open this up to a more Game of Thrones style audience, I think that is sort of on the nose with what the Star Wars fan base needs. What do you think of when you hear Game of Thrones style audience? Well, for me, it's some mature audience. It's a more adult type of audience. It's not the fantasy elements that I think they're referring to. It has to do with this more mature audience, this audience that is ready for more complicated characters, for more explicit types of content and a lot more violence. Now, there are archetypical things that I think really aid the Game of Thrones type of story from working, and this has a lot to do with like Westeros, this medieval type stuff, a lot of royalty, and I definitely want to see that introduced into the Star Wars universe as well. But I generally believe that with a lot of the focus being on newer fans, right? Fans that maybe are younger, you know what I mean? Or fans that maybe are new to the franchise. There's been a lot of focus in the first 5 years of the Disney Star Wars deal on that demographic. I truly believe that in order for Star Wars to get to a better place as a brand, it needs to reach back to the older fans and honestly give more content towards the mature audiences. And so just in general, I think that's a really good move. You're not gonna lose a lot of these new people, and with shows coming out like Resistance and perhaps even more animated shows, and the stuff that's happening on the Disney streaming platform, I don't think you're gonna lose any of this new audience if you start to just give us a little bit of stuff that's a little more mature. And guys, if you've been watching me for a long time, I've pretty much laid out a formula for what I think would fix the Star Wars fan base problem right now. And the Old Republic movies kind of allow them the perfect route to do many of these things. I mean, in general, this will turn heads. A lot of people that maybe were turned off by The Last Jedi, they don't really like what's going on in Disney Star Wars, this news undoubtedly will turn their heads. A lot of people love the Old Republic, and older Star Wars fans have a reverence for a lot of the stories that were told about the Old Republic in the expanded universe and in early video games. This will also help Disney set their canon a little bit more in stone. And what I mean is right now there's so much past that's Legends, so many things that are referred to in passing in different shows, novels, comics, or movies. Now we will get the actual official story told that sort of will become the bedrock for what the ancient Star Wars universe looked like. This is going to be huge for Disney, and I think it solves a lot of their problems with like different storytellers and where they can tell their stories. Hopefully we get a bajillion more lightsabers, like a lot more Sith, a lot more Jedi. I truly believe this would be amazing. From a marketing perspective, it's just brilliant. People love lightsabers, love Force users. Throw a bunch of that in there, stylize it, give it like that Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones type aesthetic, and man, you're sold. And I truly do mean sold. I mean, think about all that this will do for new games, whether they're tabletop or video games, all the new toys you might see coming out from this, the new stories that could be told in comic books, other video games, other movies, other TV shows. This truly just opens up a whole new avenue for Star Wars lore and content to get to fans. I think it's pretty brilliant. And so that is the news, guys. Holy cow, I think this is a big freaking deal. I truly believe this will turn the Star Wars fan base around, be something that we can unifiably all get super pumped for. I like Dan and Dave. I like the Old Republic. I think this is a huge win for Star Wars and just sets us up for the next 5 to 8 years of like movies to not be about the Skywalkers, but to be Old Republic. Like, this is literally a nerdy wet dream. I cannot believe we are actually living in this timeline. But of course, that's my feelings, my opinions about it. I want to know what you think about this. Do you agree this is going to turn things around? Are you super hyped for this? Are you skeptical because of some of the stuff that you don't like in Disney Star Wars right now? Whatever you are thinking, let me know in the comment section below. Now let's check the nerd card before we get out of here. I want to know, what was the name of Revan's Jedi Master? Famous, amazing, awesome character. Answer that question in the comment section below. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.